Hello friends, and welcome to The Hanged Man in the Moon. This video is being done at the request of one of our viewers. Recently, I received a beautiful Minchiate deck by Marco Benedetti, and I did a walkthrough of that. In case you haven't seen that walkthrough, and you're curious, I'll put a card up here for you to be able to click on and hop on over to take a look at that walkthrough video. But this is not a Minchiate. This is a traditional, standard, cleaned up facsimile of a Payen deck. And so what I'm going to do when I turn the camera down is I'm going to put this new beautiful deck, a Payen deck, side by side with another deck that was produced under the beautiful watchful eye of Marco Benedetti, which is this composite deck. So I'll put these two side by side to see if we notice any differences. I believe they're both type 1 decks, if that means anything to you. Type 1 is a Tarot de Marseille style deck that predates and was concurrent with the converse style decks, which are considered type 2. Yeah, so this is a type 1. For example, a Dodal is a type 1, but these are not Dodal. So what I'm going to do, I'll flip the camera down, we'll take a look at these decks together, and we'll see again if there are any differences. If you're interested in going on that ride, let's go together. Friends, we are back, and I decided to give us a really close close-up so that you can see, hopefully, the differences in color. But these are the two decks that we're going to be looking side by side. The new one, for me, which is the Tarot de Marseille by Jean Payen, 1743, created by Marco Benedetti. Now, this is the Tarot de Marseille by Guillaume de Besset and Claude Valentin, and this was also created in cooperation with Marco Benedetti and Shell David. So they're very interesting pairs for me, which is why I wanted to look at them together. And we'll see some very interesting differences and similarities between these two. But before we dive into the comparison, let me open up this box for you, because this box is just gorgeous. I love this. Look at this. Now, this box is wood and paper and is designed to look like a book, right? Here is the binding of the book. You can see here, Jean Payen, Tarot de Marseille, Marco Benedetti. I would love it if more decks were sold and produced boxed like this. This is just fabulous. And you might be wondering to yourself, what did he do? Did he buy this deck for the box or for the deck? Well, friends, let me show you. This is a magnetic closure. Boom, and let me open it up for you. This is just brilliant. Tarot de Marseille, Jean Payen, Avignon, 1743, fabriqué à main par Marco Benedetti. This is number 16 of 50, by the way, so there might be a few decks left and available. I'm just saying. But look at this beautiful box. There's a ribbon here to take the deck out, which we will do. Now, I haven't given this deck any close attention yet because I've been waiting to do this walkthrough with you. And then I'm going to use this deck, move the box, beautiful box, beautiful box out of the way. And let's look at the backs of this. Let's look at the backs of this deck. I love the backs of this deck. I love the image on the back. Look at that. Isn't that phenomenal? It's delicate, it's refined, it's clearly woodblock, but this is gorgeous. Now, if you're curious about size, I have here, let's see, where are my standard? Now, this is, I believe, a standard, yeah, this is a standard US Games size deck. Size-wise, it's like a standard Tarot size. It's thinner and just a little bit taller than an RWS style deck, for example. This is not an RWS deck, by the way, but it's the same size as a US Games deck. So it's a little taller and a little thinner, just like most Tarot de Marseille decks are. And in fact, I have right here my Grimaud. This is my Grimaud Tarot de Marseille deck. And these are almost exactly the same size. So if you think of mass market Tarot de Marseille decks, this size is about the same, except we have square, sharp corners, whereas a mass market deck will have the rounded corners most of the time. And plastic, very durable cardstock. So this is the deck Jean Payen. Let me flip it around, face up. I've reordered this. I have reordered this deck so that it's in an order that I enjoy walking through. Just saying. Oops, let's see. Let me pull out my Guillaume de Besset and Claude Valentin deck so that we can look at them side by side. The cardstock is almost exactly the same. Well, actually, it probably is exactly the same. Unfortunately, I'm almost sure that this deck is completely sold out. This deck, I believe there are a couple of copies left, maybe. But right off the bat, what do we see? We see that the batelier, they're like mirror images, right? They're both facing each other. And as a mirror, the wand is in the outside hand, right? There is a die, perhaps, or a coin in the hand of the batelier. How many legs to the table? Let's see here, 1, 2, 3. You can see those legs very easily. Here I see 1, 2, let's see, what is that? Oh, it's part of the printing. Oh, here's the third leg. Okay, so here's the third leg of the table. Do you see that? But it hasn't been colored in, nor has the foot of the batelier been colored in here. So there are many differences. One of the reasons I love this deck, which is a copy of the Guillaume de Besset and Claude Valentin, is the black. We'll see a lot of black in this deck, which I love. Instead of black in the Payen deck, we're going to see steel blue and a very, very dark navy blue, I believe. Also beautiful and different. Now, I mentioned that these were type 1 decks, and I don't believe I mentioned what that means. So, type 1 decks are similar, like the Dodada is a type 1 deck. Type 2 decks are representative, or the representative deck of a type 2 deck would be the Nicholas Condor. And we can't really say that the type 1 decks are all before the type 2 decks. They were printed concurrently during a portion of the 1700s. But you can distinguish the type 1 from the type 2, especially in a few cards. The Lover card, the Chariot card, the Devil card, and the Moon card especially. You can see the differences. And we'll look at the differences here in these two decks as well. But the Magician card, very standard. We got blonde hair instead of brown, yeah? The things on the table are pretty much the same, except again in mirror order. The 2 cups, the die, the knives, the purse, all there, but again, it's like they're mirror images. Now we'll move to the papes, and these are not mirror images, right? They're very similar, except do you notice the crowns are different? Yeah, the crowns are different. This crown looks more like a dome shape, right? Whereas this crown looks like it's open at the top. That's very interesting. And here, the colors are different. The expressions on her face, she looks a little older than she does to me. But that's not all that important, I don't think. Beautiful cards, though, both of them. And then we go to card 3, the Empress. I'm sorry. This is supposed to be a veil, I'm sure. But every time I see this, I keep thinking it's a beard. My first glance, it's probably a veil. But very similar, although these are again mirror images, right? They're looking in opposite directions. The shields look like they're mirror images of each other, right? Beautiful. Can almost see a foot here at the bottom of the Imperatrice. Do you see that? Might be a foot there. Don't see that in the other deck. Oh, stunning, stunning. The faces on the Payen deck look a little softer to me. Bigger eyes, definitely. Interesting. And here we go with the, oh, look at that. The Emperor. Now, here's another thing about type 1. Almost all of the time, I believe, in a type 1 deck, there's going to be a 4 floating in front of the face of the Emperor. Clearly, it's a 4 here. This one looks a little bit like a cross, but it's probably a remnant of a 4 on a woodblock that it has worn down in a very interesting way. This is probably originally a 4 as well. Again, mirror images. But can you see the difference in color here? Where this side, it's very dark black. This looks like a very dark navy color to me. Can you see that on camera? Let me see. Let me check to see how good the lighting difference is. Oh, I can probably move these a little bit close. Well, okay. These cards are, I've zoomed the camera in very, very closely. So, oh gosh. And this is probably not the best way to be redoing this for us, but okay, friends, we're going with it like this. Here we go. Here we go. Okay. So, there we go. Yes, so type 1 emperors with the floating 4. And again, these two are mirror images. And so is the pape, le pape. So now I'm curious, why was the high priestess the only one that was not a mirror image so far? That is interesting, isn't it? Let me pull her back out. Now see, they've all been mirror images so far except for la papessa. La papessa. That's so interesting. Okay, so the Pope, the deck on this side, right? The Dubuisset and Valentin deck, we've got more browns and again black, whereas we'll have more blues and steel blues in the Payen deck. Very similar though. Okay, so here we go with the type 1 lover card. And you'll see that Cupid is blindfolded. These cards are, let's see, yeah, they are mirror images. Here is the woman who could be the one of diligence and propriety. And here's the woman on the outside who is probably the one of sensuality and enjoyment of life. I mean, that's one way of reading. And then the figure in the center is choosing between two paths of married life, right? That's one way of looking at these images. I'm not saying it's the only way or the best way, but one way of looking at them. You could also look at this as like the mother and the new spouse. That's another way of looking at that. I've heard that before as well. But look at the differences in the cupids, in the angels up here. Yeah? Both blindfolded. Can you see the blindfold on this one? It's a little difficult to see, but there it is. Now the wings are very similarly very abstract, kind of like a cubist angel to me. Now, in a type 2, this is the kind of angel we're probably more used to seeing, right? Not blindfolded, very clearly drawn. Now, the arrow is usually pointed down towards, oftentimes people think of it pointed towards the lover's foot here. Whereas here in the type 1 version, we're not exactly sure where that arrow is going to go. We don't even see feet in either of these decks. Very funky hairstyle on this lover and the central figure here, right? An reverse mohawk maybe. Okay, here we go for the chariot card. Here's another difference between type 1 and type 2. Now, type 1, we see this scalloped bunting here at the top in a type 1. Usually there is, okay, so here we don't see any kind of shield. Here we do see a shield for the initials of a printer, perhaps. None in the Payen deck. Now, in a type 2, what do we see? We see the canopy is very different, right? There's this thing here which seems to be drawn up in the center and tied instead of scallops. Very, very interesting differences, right? Oh, we have a printer initials here, SM, from the Grimaud deck. Okay, so that's another indication that this is These are, I should say, type 1 cards, type 1 decks. And you can also see that it's not necessary to have the shield for it to be a type 1 Tarot de Marseille. And here we go with Justice. Of course, we know that Justice is in spot 8 for Tarot de Marseille. Here we don't have the La in front of Justice. We do in the Payen deck. Again, we have a mirror, right? The swords are mirror images. The scales are mirror images as well. So it really makes me wonder about that Bopes card. Hermit as well, mirror image, right? The lanterns are very different. We lose a lot of the lantern in the Payen deck. And, okay, I said I wasn't going, at least I thought I wouldn't focus on spelling much. The spelling difference here is also interesting. We have L, Le Eremite, no H. We have Le Eremite with an H in the Payen deck. This almost looks like he's got a sling on his arm, doesn't it? Like he's broken his arm or sprained his elbow or something and he's got his arm in a sling. Although one would probably not use that arm with a cane if that were true, but still, it looks like a sling to me. And here we go with the fortune card. La robe de fortune, very, very similar, except, again, mirror. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yes, they're both incomplete axles on the wheel. Now, we don't see this side of the axle on either of the cards. Very interesting. This donkey looks a little different. If you think this is a donkey, this donkey's headband is more pronounced than this donkey's headband. But we also have this weird, maybe pyramid shape or mountain shape here on the side in both cards, which you'd almost think that would be an afterthought, but it's maintained even when the image is mirrored. Okay, here's one that doesn't get mirrored again. Just like the Papes, La Force, not mirrored. Both facing the same directions. The manes and the lions are a little bit different. Very different looking ladies, right? Although they both have that hat which recalls us the lemniscate, the 8 on its side, doesn't it? We have a curly mane, very straight looking mane in the Payen deck. And Le Pendu, very different hanged man. This one looks a little bit like a Swiss hanged man to me. No, not a Swiss hanged man. What is that deck? Maybe it's the Dodal or maybe it's the Noble. Anyways, the fingers sticking out above the shoulders and the tongue sticking out. One of my favorite kinds of hanged men. And it's really difficult to see how well this figure is tied to this beam in the Payen deck. Here, you can really see the rope going around his ankle, right? Not so much in the Payen deck. He almost looks like he's floating to me. Lovely, lovely. And here we have the unnamed card is named in this deck, but as standard, no name in the Payen deck. But both facing the same direction. Okay, these aren't mirrored either. So we've got 3 cards so far that are not mirrored. La Papes, La Force. Oh, also the Hanged Man. Okay, there's another one that was not mirrored. The Hanged Man. I'm sorry. I'm doing something off on the side and you see my pointer chopstick waving around in your face unnecessarily. Okay, so this is the 4th card, which is not mirrored in the Major Arcana. Although, look at the difference in the ground here, right? This very standard, very black ground here, whereas this one, we've got gold and then white. And it almost looks like this skeleton is wearing a skirt, whereas this one definitely is not. Beautiful cards both ways. Okay, Temperance, also not mirrored. Interesting. Oh, there's a lot more detail in the Dubuisset Valentin deck than, what am I talking about? Well, the wings for one. Wings are much more detailed here. The ground is much more detailed here. The ground is very plain in the Payen deck. Very interesting. Yeah, this Temperance card has a lot more detail. Okay, and the Devil card. This is another card where we see differences. Let's see. Well, now this Devil card is actually very much like a type 2, I believe. Yes, this is very similar to the type 2 card. There's no face here in the tummy for a type 2. But except for that, the bat wings are similar, but not as similar as one might expect. Now, we don't see much flame in this card where we do see flame in the wand in these. We have a face in the belly. Genitals are much more pronounced in the Dubuisset Valentin deck, whereas it's really hard. It almost looks like this devil is wearing underwear, but you can see through the underwear just a little bit. Yeah? Oh, there's another difference here. Eyes in the knees. Forgot about that. Here we go. No eyes in the knees in the Grimaud. Eye. Okay. Are these guys no, they're not mirrored imaged. They're not mirror images. Neither is the tower, the Maison Dieu. But you can see this in a type 1 deck. Often it looks like the fire is coming out of the tower rather than down from the sun. And I forgot to pull that card out of my Grimaud. Where is my Grimaud? There it is. Let me get the Grimaud tower so you can hopefully see a difference there. Yeah, here we go. Grimaud, the type 2 tower, definitely this seems to be coming from above. Whereas here in the type 1, it looks like to me it looks like it's shooting out from the tower. Except for that, very similar, black and then this dark steel blue for the ground. Black in the Dubuisset Claude Valentin deck. Okay, here we have the star. When I did a walkthrough of this deck, this patch of black was very intriguing to me. Still is intriguing to me. Here the ground looks a little bit more understandable. We don't see anything here that looks like it's out of place, whereas this black really looks out of place to me. Not a mirror image. Interesting. Love the stars here. Very similar, very, very similar, but we can't see the black outline of the star, of the red star here, where we can see the black outline of the red star on the left. The ibis, the bird is also a little easier to see here than it is in the Payen deck. La Lune, okay, this is the other one. This is the other card that makes it really obvious that this is a type 1 and not a type 2 deck. Let me show you the type 2 moon. Now, the type 2 moon is in profile. The type 1 moon is face forward. See that? Lovely. Dogs are very, very similar. Crustacean is very similar, although we do have red on the crustacean in the Payen deck, whereas we don't in the other one. Lovely cards. And we see more careful detail, I think, in the Dubuisset Valentin deck than we do in the Payen deck. But both, like I said, both are just stunning to me. Here's the sun. So it looks like we're done with having mirror images, doesn't it? Le soleil, le soleil. Yeah, hands are in very similar positions. The sun this sun looks a little bit happier than this sun does to me. The brick wall, very similar. And jugement. Now the blue baby in front, the flesh-toned humans behind. The flag on the trumpet, very similar. Yeah. Curly hair, straight hair on the angel. Okay, so this is different. These clouds look more like, I don't know, whipped cream, whereas this looks like crenulated fabric around the angel to me. Like you would see in in one of the aces, like the Ace of Wands or the Ace of Swords. Let me see if I can find one of those. Well, here's the Ace of Swords from a Grimaud deck. Yeah, this has always looked like crenulated fabric to me. Now, see how that cloud looks like this? Whereas this cloud looks very much like, I don't know, whipped cream to me. That's a whipping cream that's been whipped up, or egg whites that have been whipped up. Okay, so moving on from Jugement, Le Jugement, to Le Monde. Look at these. Very, very similar. Now, type 1, we got this around the pelvis of the figure, looking a little bit more androgynous than in a type 2 deck, I should say. A type 2 deck. Let me see if I can find the world. I hadn't thought to pull that one out. Even though we are the world, right? We are the children. If it doesn't take me too long to find the world in this deck, here's Jugement, here we go. Type 2 world card, right there, yeah? Type 1, more androgynous. Instead of this shawl around her looking shoulders and covering up her private parts, there's just this band of what looks like leaves, right? Very, very different. And between these two cards, very, very similar. Lovely. And again, we've got, I hope you can see this color difference. The dark steel blue and then a very dark navy blue, whereas here we've got black. And I really wanted to get this deck because of that black for one reason. I love that. We don't see it very often. In this way. Okay, and now we have Le Fool. The Fool, mirror image again, right? They're going in different directions. Very interesting. It's very curious as to why these cards are partially mirror, partially not. It probably has something to do with the transfer of images to wood blocks and some getting accidentally reversed and some not. It's very, very interesting. It's interesting also how clear this creature is, whereas this one is all blurry, right? And the face, this fool goes outside of the border, whereas this fool's head, very small head, we must admit, most of this fool, except for the bottom of the legs and the feet, is inside of the border, whereas here, part of the head is cut off. Now, but we do see feet here. Interesting, interesting. Okay, here we go with the minor arcana. So, I was talking about the crenulated halo on the... Yes, okay, so they do match, right? Here's the Ace of Wands, and here's the cloud here, the cloud, I guess, here. Basically the same style, right? Okay, so now it makes pretty clear sense. Dark blue, black. Mirror images. Again, we're back to a mirror image. And here we have the Two of Wands. Faded black, faded steel blue. The flowers are different too, right? There's a little bulbous thing here, whereas there's no bulbous thing in either side of the two. 3, gorgeous. Very similar, except for the color differences, of course. Here is the 4. Lovely. Interestingly, we get more detail on the floral accents in the Payen deck than we do in the Guillaume de Bisset and Claude Valentin. But you'll also notice here, well, I've mentioned this in my first walkthrough of this deck, we have shadow imaging here, which is also very interesting. Do you see that? You see these very faint wands lines here, and some floral decoration here in the background, like this had been accidentally printed with almost no ink once, and then they decided to, instead of throwing away the paper, print on top of it. Here we have the 5. Lovely. Very similar. Although the Payen deck seems to be more within the frame than the other deck. The 6. Look how thin the red lines are here. Whereas here they're very well colored in, very detailed. Very odd little patch up here. 7. Lovely. No red in the floral decorations in the Payen deck. Here are the 8s. Look at those. Lovely. Very similar. Color differences, yes. Different. Definitely not just recolored. They were redrawn and the blocks were recut. Or were differently cut, I should say, not recut. It's not like they were done by the same printer. The 9s. And you'll see that the 9 here, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. Let's go back to the 7s. Now, this number is just wrong. This number is right. The 6s are fine in this deck. VI, 6. IIV is not a thing. This is correct in the Payen deck. And here we have the 9s. The 9s are, I'm sorry, the 9s are, again, here. No, that's correct. They're both correct. And then the 10s. Lovely. Absolutely lovely. Now, the printing of the color is different, and the font for the titles the fonts for the titles are different. These people look a little happier, a little more pleasant than the faces of the people in the Dubuisset-Valentin deck. But these folks have curlier hair than these folks. Just saying. Look at that knight. All that curly hair. No curly hair in the Payen deck. And the clothes are much more simply drawn than in the combined deck. You got green for the wand here, where it's all this dark steel blue. And the queen, love the queen in both of these decks. But she looks healthier to me than her. She hasn't gotten enough sleep, and she might be addicted to some substance, if you ask me. Very beautiful cards. Okay, and then the king. The kings are mirror images. The knights were not. The pages were not. Just double checking up to the side, right? The pages are not. The kings are mirror images. And this wand is so different. This is more standard looking, even for a type 1. This wand is just weird. How it comes down to this really odd blotchy point at the bottom. Now, that sounds like I'm thinking of this very negatively, and I'm not. It's just odd. Here are the Ace of Cups. This is the order that I like. Very similar. Yeah, the city of Jerusalem on top of the cup. The water pouring out of the sides in the front. A little more detail is visible in the Payen deck. Here we go. First indication of who, but there's no indication of who in this combined deck, right? We have CV, which would be Claude Valentin, probably. But here we have Jean Payen à la place de Centenière à Avignon. The dragon heads are clearer here than they are in the Payen deck. And actually the cups are much more refined in the Dubuisset-Valentin deck than they are in the Payen deck. And that difference is going to continue throughout the rest of the suits, I'm sure. The suit, I'm sure. The 3s, and here we go with the 4. Look at that. Love the detail on this card. Not much detail here. Very rudimentary, if you ask me. But that's also wonderful. The 4 of Cups. Here we have the 5 of Cups. The Sang. Beautiful card here, but beautiful and simpler here in the Payen deck. You'll notice that there's no flower down here. Instead, there's a star, which is interesting, right? And the 6 of Cups. Look at these guys. Here we have a much clearer floral star-like image. Here it's a little difficult to see. There are flower petals here, 1, 2, 3, 4, but they're very difficult to see. And the 7 of Cups. No number on this deck, but we continue the numbering in the Payen deck. The 8 of Cups. Again, here we have a return of number, and it continues in the Payen deck. But these cups are so much more refined. The color, the printing of the color was much more careful in the combined deck. And the 9 of Cups. Less color in the floral decorations, but easier to see than they are in the Payen deck. And the 10. Let's see. Oh, nope, not mirror image. They're similar. I mean, they're the same, actually. Hard to see this pattern here in here, but it's there. It's there. It's just really dark, difficult to see. The line work is so smeared by the red. And Le Valet de Coupe. Here we have an S after C-O-U, actually C-O-V-E-F-S, Coufs. Instead of, no, that's probably a P. C-O-U-E-P, Coups, whereas here we have de Coupe. This C almost looks like an I. Now these are mirror imaged. Okay, so another mirror imaged court card. Look at all that brown. Okay, so Chevalier de Coupe, mirror image again. They're riding into each other. Maybe these two guys are in love. Very similar cups. It's easier to see that this is a hat and this is hair perhaps, or maybe even a shield. I hadn't thought of that before. Maybe that's a shield. Whereas here it looks like long flowing hair. Doesn't it? And the Rayon de Coupe, beautiful. Much prettier face to me. Oh, look at that. You can see, maybe that's an undergarment, or those are her breasts that are peeking out from her bodice. With a cross up here. I hadn't noticed that the last time, I don't think. Here, very, very prim and proper looking Queen of Cups. Although, it's interesting. Okay, so crown and cloth cover here, right? It almost looks to me like this crown has these cloths dangling from the top, making this a very heavy looking crown. Can you see what I'm seeing? I'm sure that's not what the intent was, and I'm sure that other people have not seen it that way and probably don't see it that way, but to me it looks like this part of the crown comes up and there's this cloth hanging down, and then this back part of the crown comes up and then there's this longer cloth hanging down in the back. I know that's weird. Okay, moving on to the king. Roi de Coupe, mirror image. Interesting. Okay. I'm sitting on the floor and having a little difficulty with my posture. Beautiful. Beautiful in both cases. Notice how the floor of both kings is very odd and a little cubist to me. And the ace of coin. Here we go. Coins look very different, don't they? I mean, the style is basically the same, but still, very different looking coins. And the 2. Okay, so what do we have in the 2? Here it says, chez Jean Payen, 1743. Here we have Guillaume du Besset, Lyon. No date, which is interesting. The Three of Coins, very similar. Although it's interesting, whereas this deck has so much black, we see more dark coloration of the coins in the Payen deck. Okay, here we've got some black coloration in the four. Shields are very different. We've got mountains with two upward pointing moons perhaps and a star. Here we've got, I don't know what. They look like, on the outside they look like clubs to me from the French playing cards, which we often use, which we use in the English-speaking world. Now the clubs, the diamonds, the spades, and the hearts. Now these look like the clubs, don't they? And a very oddly designed, maybe floral image in the center over a kind of landscape. I don't know. What the heck is that? Let me know in the comments below. What do you think that is? What is that? And the Five of Coins. Beautiful. The Six of Coins. I love the organization of the Six of Coins in a Tarot de Marseille deck. It looks like it could be a wheel, or some people see people sitting around a dinner table as well. But I see a wheel of gears, of like the material that can move around in a very stable system. Like cogs on a okay, I'm going to go there. You know how tanks have those large belted wheels on the sides? Yeah? Imagine that belt around these coins. And that being a moving, active, functioning, but stable configuration of gears and ability to travel through space-time. You know what I'm saying? I know, a weird imagination. That's what I see. Here we have the Seven of Coins. Very similar. No red in here, no red, but red dots in the center here. Red dots here, but not exactly in the center in the combined deck. Here in the red dots are very well placed in the Payen deck for the Eight of Coins. Here's the Nine. Lovely, lovely on all counts. Much lighter looking coin suit, right? The overall atmosphere of the coins in the Payen deck is much lighter, much cleaner, whereas these look more worn, more antique, a little dirtier, darker in the combined deck. And the Ten of Coins. Flower, much more intricate and detailed in the combined deck than in the Payen deck. Although, notice that. I hadn't noticed that before. Look at how that ink, the gold ink, is just splotched out onto the sides here. Okay, here we, now this is interesting. Notice this, Valet de Denier. It's almost, it's very difficult to read this because it's a mirror image. Valet de Denier. So it's the combined deck that is wonky, right? Those cards that are flipped, they're flipped in a wonky way in this deck. This is the standard. I believe. And Chevalier de Denier. Now the images here are mirrored, but the titles are the same. A little clearer ground in the combined deck than in the Payen deck. What do you think of about the expression of this page, of this, this Chevalier, this knight, as compared with this expression? Let me know in the comments below. Almost looks like a very old lady to me. I don't know. Okay, moving on to the Queen of Coins. Again, mirror images. Voyant de Denier. Voyant de de denier. This is rien de denier, rien de. Oh, they're both. Rien. Oh, that's so interesting. R-E-I or Y, N-E-D. I'm sorry, N-E-D, N-D-E, D-E-N-A. Okay, so this is, yeah, rien de denier. This is rien de denier. Very interesting spelling choice. Okay, king, roi de denier. Roi de denier. Roi de denier. They needed spell check back then, didn't they? And the Ace of Swords. Brown hand. Pink hand. But both have crenulated clouds and mirror images again. So interesting. The Two of Swords. Lovely. Very, very similar. The coloration is different, yes, but very similar. Three of Swords. Very nice. I really like this blue in the Payen deck. The Four of Swords. No chance for mistaking the numbering there, since they're additive numbering. Five of Swords. The V's are very small in the Payen deck. Let's see. Here we go with the Six of Swords. Okay, VI, VI, they're okay. The Seven of Swords. Here they're messed up again. IIV instead of VII in the combined deck. Here, Payen deck, the numbers are okay. Although it's very difficult to see this number, right? And the Eight of Swords, yep, numbers are all okay. Red dot in the center, no red dot in the combined deck. And the Nine of Swords. The sword is so much clearer to see than it is here in the Payen deck. And that red is just so vibrant in the Payen deck, isn't it? The Ten of Swords. Ooh. These swords look a little bit odd, well, this one sword looks a little bit odd on the left. Not only is it not a continuous looking line, but this kind of looks curved to me, like it's been knocked out of shape. This sword looks very straight and accurate. This one looks a little wonky. The Valet d'Épée. D'Épée. With an S. D'Épée. Mirror images again. And here we have the Knight of Swords. Chevalier d'Épée. Interesting, the last letter in both of these is a little weird. Chevalier d'Espée. It looks like an F. Chevalier d'Espée. Oh, who the heck? That looks like a gamma. It's a backwards gamma. Or is that frontwards gamma? Anyways, it does not look like a T at all in either deck. This one really looks like an F in the combined deck. But again, the armor is so much more intricately drawn in the combined deck than it is in the Payen deck, and the Payen deck has a lot of good detail. Very, very dark navy blue here, whereas we've got bits of black in the combined deck. The Queen with a star. Love that star in this Royal d'Espée. The red is bold, more vibrant, but blotches out or covers the lines in the Payen deck. Here, the colors, the detailed drawing of the bodice is very clear. And the undergarment under the bodice, you can see peeking out here. Here, none of that in the Payen deck. And finally, the Roi d'Espée, both looking in the same direction. Okay, I did not mention that, but the queens are not reversed. the knights were reversed, right? The knights were reversed, but the queens and the kings are not reversed. They're not mirror images. Lovely, lovely cards in all counts. So friends, what do you think? This deck, I'm so glad I got this Payen deck from Marco Benedetti. Now, I also want to get the earlier deck. This deck by Jean Payen from 1743. He is, I believe, the grandson of another Payen, producer of Tarot de Marseille cards from the earlier 1700s. And I think I've tracked down a deck of the grandfathers. And hopefully I'll be able to get a hold of that one and maybe do a walkthrough of a comparison between the grandfathers and the grandsons deck sometime in the future. But before we go our separate ways, before I end this video, I'll do a quick shuffle and a quick reading for us, just so you see how well this deck shuffles in real time. And I'll do a quick shuffle and ask the question, what would we benefit from giving our attention to? Oops. Okay, we don't want another Dex card invading our space. Oops. Okay, so let me make sure I've got all of the cards here. Okay, here we go. What would we benefit from giving our attention to now? That's for me now, for you now, whenever it is that you're watching this video. What would we benefit from giving our attention to now? And what I'm going to do is I'll give us maybe 3 riffle shuffles so that we all see how well this riffle shuffles. Got very limited space. Oops. Because we have very limited space. There we go. Okay, so yes, that works okay. It riffle shuffles very nicely. But I've got the camera zoomed in so close that I don't really have much space here for shuffling. Let me try that again. Okay. What would we benefit from giving our attention to now? What would we benefit from giving our attention to now? Ah, they shuffle so beautifully. Ah, bridge so beautifully. And they're cut also very nicely. They're not mass market machine cut, but they're still very comfortable to hold in the hand. Sometimes when they're not mass market machine cut, you can feel a lot of cards sticking up. The size difference is noticeable and it can be uncomfortable. This deck is none of that. It's very easy and very comfortable to hold, very comfortable to shuffle, even though they're not coated. Just lovely. So, I'll cut the cards, and I'll do every 9th card for a 3-card spread. What would we benefit from giving our attention to today, right now? First card is this one, the Knight of Wands, Chevalier de Bastos. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What's the 3rd card after card 13? The unnamed card. We have the King of Wands. Okay. So I'm going to read this as a progression from left to right, because the unnamed card and the king are all facing in the same direction. That's the direction I laid these cards out in. And also the Knight of Wands is also facing this direction, even though he seems to want to be riding off in that direction. Maybe he's about to make a turnaround. So maybe that's what this spread is calling us to do. Yeah? To take that turn. To take that turn and grab a hold of what it is we are passionate about. What drives our lives? What moves us forward? What gives us our inspiration to act and create in the world, to take hold of that and make a turnaround in a new direction. And as we do that, we want to clear our path, clear away those things which we had been carrying with us, perhaps, as we were going in the other direction. We're moving direction, we're coming into something new, and we want to clear space away, clear out some space for us for that thing, that passion, to be able to grow. Because with too much stuff, there won't be room for that creativity to get its nutrients. There will be other things sucking the nutrients out of that creativity. There will be other things blocking the sun from that thing that wants to grow. But we can also think of this as harvest, right? We've turned around and we harvest that which has been growing around us. We sift out the chaff from the grain. We keep the grain, we toss out the chaff, and we have more space for this thing to grow. And we move forward and we own that. We own our leadership. We own our creativity in our lives. We have sovereignty over our creative journey and our creative path, our passion, our path of passion. Seems like a very good reading for us, don't you think? If you think so, let me know in the comments below. If you don't think so, let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to hear from you. What do you think of this deck? Do you have a Payen deck? Do you have the deck from the grandfather, which I think was around 17, maybe 13, 15, 18, something like that? Do you have another Payen deck? Let me know in the comments below. So friends, here we are. Thank you for being here, for looking at these two gorgeous decks together by the wonderful Marco Benedetti. And I'll have a link to Marco Benedetti's Facebook page. If you are interested in any of his work, you can reach out to him through that. If you want a private reading from me, my email address will be below, thehangedmaninthemoon@gmail.com. Shoot me an email, we'll get you a reading. Okay, friends, now I've got to go clean the house, so I've got to stop here. Now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.